The paper plates were still warm with barbecue sauce when my father lifted his glass and turned the happiest afternoon of the year into the moment that finally broke our family forever. My name is Claire Bennett, and I was 34 years old. Standing at the edge of our Father's Day table while nearly 40 relatives and neighbors laughed around me, my father smiled proudly and thanked everyone for coming. Then his eyes landed on me and his smile vanished. "I'm proud of all my children, except the disappointment standing over there," he said, loud enough for every person to hear. Nobody defended me, nobody even looked uncomfortable. They simply looked away as if those words belonged there. I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I quietly smiled, placed a plain manila envelope beside his plate, wished him a happy Father's Day, and walked toward my car before I reached the end of the gravel driveway. I heard the screen door slam behind me, then I heard my father scream my name so loudly that neighbors stepped onto their porches to see what had happened. But to understand why that envelope destroyed everything, you have to go back 5 years to the day. My mother died back then. I spent my days inside a small accounting office in the quiet farming town of Willow Ridge. I wasn't rich or flashy. I was simply the woman local farmers called when one mistake could cost them everything. That Father's Day morning, I had just saved an elderly farmer from a crushing tax penalty by finding one forgotten rule buried inside state paperwork. He thanked me through tears and kept repeating that I'd saved his family farm. Funny how strangers always seem to appreciate what my own family never could. I had built my business from nothing, with an old folding table, a used laptop, and years of 16-hour workdays. Yet inside my family's version of the story, I wasn't hardworking. I was selfish, cold, and obsessed with numbers instead of people. Even after all those years, they still believed. My older brother Ethan was the hero because he stayed on the family farm while I left to build my own life. I looked at the calendar sitting beside my computer. Father's Day. I almost stayed home, like I promised myself every year, but I couldn't. My mother had always believed family mattered, even when family forgot how to love each other. Besides, there was unfinished business waiting for me at that farmhouse, something nobody else knew existed. The drive out to Bennett Farm never changed. 2 narrow highways became gravel roads until the familiar white fence appeared beside 80 acres of rolling fields. My grandfather had built that place with his own hands after returning home from war. My mother planted the giant oak tree in the front yard during her first spring there. She always said a family survives because of the roots nobody notices. I parked farther away than everyone else because I always did. Habit teaches your body where it doesn't belong long before your heart finally accepts it. I sat inside the car for a minute and reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against an old metal tin that had stayed with me for 2 years. I had brought it back today for a reason, although I still wasn't sure whether. I was ready to use what was inside. As soon as I stepped out, my brother greeted guests like he already owned the property. Ethan was 4 years older, charming when people were watching and gifted at making everyone believe he carried the family. On his shoulders, his wife Melissa floated beside him, smiling sweetly while quietly reminding everyone who had bothered to show up for family gatherings. The message wasn't subtle when she saw me. She smiled and said they were thankful the people who truly cared had made time to come. My Aunt Carol frowned the second she noticed me, and my father barely acknowledged my arrival with a tiny nod. I carried a tray of deviled eggs toward the table simply to keep my hands busy while I watched. Everyone something felt wrong. Ethan leaned close to my father several times, whispering things that made Dad nod slowly with complete trust. Melissa kept watching those conversations before glancing nervously toward me. Every instinct I had from years of studying financial documents whispered the same warning. Something wasn't adding up. 5 years earlier, while my mother lay dying upstairs, our family farm had already been drowning beneath debt. I knew because, unlike everyone else, I actually understood the financial statements. Ethan had arrived with what he called the perfect investment opportunity, claiming one business deal would erase every loan. If Dad borrowed against the farm, I asked simple questions. Who was investing? Where was the paperwork? What happened if the deal failed? Ethan exploded, accusing me of caring more about contracts than my own dying mother. I spent 2 nights preparing projections showing exactly how much they could lose if everything went wrong. My father looked at my folder for barely 1 second before laying it face down without reading a single page. "We don't need your spreadsheets, Claire, we need faith." He told me that sentence changed everything. From that day forward, I became the daughter who supposedly chose money over family. When the investment collapsed months later, nobody blamed Ethan. They blamed me because grief always needs somewhere easy to hide. At my mother's funeral, relatives whispered that I never truly loved her, while Ethan cried beautifully beside the casket, earning sympathy from everyone who watched. None of them knew I had quietly paid every hospice bill, every medication, and every nurse caring for my mother during her final weeks. I never told anyone because my mother asked me not to. My father believed he had somehow managed it himself, while Ethan pretended he was too busy trying to save the farm. Even after losing my mother, I kept returning to that house because promises matter, especially promises made to someone who believed in you until her very last breath, 2 years before that Father's Day. I visited my father after several unanswered phone calls while making coffee. I noticed overdue bank notices hidden beneath an old newspaper, bright red. Letters screamed second. Notice I didn't need to open them to know exactly what they meant when I gently offered to review the finances for free. Dad refused, instantly insisting he and Ethan had everything under control. I left without arguing, but I sat inside my car for nearly an hour because professionals recognize panic long before families admit it exists. Deep down, I already knew Bennett Farm wasn't surviving. Somebody was hiding the truth, and sooner or later the truth was going to demand its place at the table. But none of them had any idea. I had already made the first move 2 years earlier, and before the sun set that Father's Day, every secret they buried was about to come crashing into the light.